The fire was burning low that night, all red coals and gentle flickers, when the conversation started to shift. It always happens that way. First it's talk about gear and weather, then funny stories about who forgot the matches, or how someone once mistook a raccoon for a bear. But then, as the moon climbs and the air cools, something changes. The laughter softens, the voices drop, and people start to open up in ways they don't under electric lights. I remember that night in particular because it was the first time our group, friends from work who'd started camping together once a year, really talked. There were 6 of us around that fire, the kind of mix you get when life throws people together. 2 old friends, a couple still new enough to blush when they brushed hands, a quiet guy named Mason who worked maintenance at the plant, and me. The sky was perfectly clear, the stars sharp enough to cut. You could hear the faint rush of the river in the dark and the crack of a log collapsing into coals. Someone, I think it was Emma, said softly, "You ever notice how the dark out here makes it easier to tell the truth?" That got a few murmurs. Then she told us about her brother, how they hadn't spoken in 3 years, how she still carried his old lighter on every trip. She held it up, brass and worn smooth, catching the firelight. "I guess it makes me feel like we're still camping together somehow," she said. After that, the floodgates opened. One by one, stories spilled out. Lost chances, quiet regrets, things never said. The woods seemed to listen with us, the pines tall and patient. Even Mason, who'd hardly said 10 words all weekend, started to talk. His voice was rough, but steady. "I wasn't going to say anything," he began, poking at the fire with a stick. "But since we're all telling truths, I wasn't supposed to be here." That caught everyone's attention. The only sound for a moment was the hiss of sap in the fire. Mason looked up, eyes glinting orange. "This trip, it was my brother's idea. He was the outdoorsman, not me. He passed. Every one of us was just lying there, turning over what had been said the night before. There's a weight that comes with honesty, even the kind that feels like a relief. It hangs in the air, not unkindly, just present. I was the first to crawl out, mostly because I couldn't stand the stillness anymore. The ground was damp and cool beneath my boots, and the coals in the fire pit were still faintly glowing. I stirred them gently, fed in some dry kindling, and soon the first thin curls of smoke were rising. One by one, the others emerged, bleary-eyed but softer somehow, like we'd all been changed in ways we hadn't yet put into words. Mason was last. He didn't say much, just sat near the fire and poured himself a cup of coffee. The tin mug rattled against the pot as he ladled it full, and for a long while, none of us spoke. Then Emma, who was always the brave one when it came to awkward silences, said, "You know, Mason, I didn't realise this was your brother's spot. I think he'd be glad you still come out here." He gave a slow nod, staring into his coffee. "He would have liked you all," he said quietly. He used to say that a good campsite's not about the view or the firewood, it's about the people who sit around the flames. That seemed to settle something in the air. We made breakfast together without much fuss, scrambled eggs, bacon crisping on the skillet, the smell cutting through the chill. The steam from our mugs mingled with the smoke, and soon laughter started to bubble up again, hesitant at first but real. It felt good, honest. Later that morning, as the sun broke through and the mist burned off, Mason pulled something out of his pack, a small, weathered journal. "It's his," he said. "He used to write down every trip. Places we went, things we saw. Last entries from the year before he passed." He thumbed through the pages, then closed it carefully and looked around at us. Maybe we should start a new chapter. That hit hard. None of us spoke, but every head nodded. Emma reached for her pen and wrote the date on the first blank page. Beneath it, she wrote, "Around the fire, the light of the sinking sun." We pitched the tents again, more by instinct than plan, and everyone seemed quieter than usual. It wasn't an uncomfortable quiet, just thoughtful. There's something about a good talk by the fire that stays with you, even when you've moved on. By the time the stars came out, we'd gathered wood and started another blaze. The fire popped and spat as it caught, painting our faces in flickering orange. The air had that clean, sharp edge that comes only in the mountains after sunset. You could smell the resin from the pines, the faint tang of smoke, and beneath it all, the damp earth, cooling for the night. We cooked dinner: beans, a few potatoes roasted in the coals, and the last of the jerky. Nothing fancy, but food always tastes better out there. Emma told a joke about bears that got everyone laughing again, and just like that, the heaviness of the morning began to lift. Mason even cracked a smile, the first one I'd seen from him since the day before. When the fire burned down to a mellow glow, we all sat back and watched the sky. You could hear the distant call of a night bird, maybe an owl, and the rustle of wind moving through dry grass. It felt peaceful in a way that's hard to find anywhere but the wilderness. Then, out of nowhere, Ryan, the youngest of the group and usually the clown, said, "I've been thinking about something Mason said last night." He looked at the flames, not at us. About places being made special by people. I think maybe that's why I keep coming back, even when life feels like a mess. Because out here, sitting with you all, it's simple. Real. We all nodded, no words needed. Then he chuckled softly. "Guess I'm getting sentimental." "No," Mason said, his voice low but sure. "You're getting honest. That's different." Something about that line stuck with me. It felt like a truth worth carrying. The fire cracked again, and the sparks rose high, like tiny stars trying to return home. We ended the night with a quiet toast. Cups of lukewarm cocoa raised toward the dark. Emma said, "To the easy stretch. Enough to get the heart pumping, but not enough to drown out the conversation." We fell into pairs as we walked. Emma and Ryan led the way, their laughter floating back on the breeze. Behind them, Mason and I walked in silence for a while. He carried his brother's old journal strapped to the side of his pack, and I noticed he'd tied a new ribbon around it, a bright blue strip of cloth that caught the light when the wind hit it just right. "You know," I said finally, "I think your brother would have liked how you've kept his memory alive out here." Mason smiled, the faintest curve at the edge of his mouth. He used to say that the woods remember us even when we're gone. I didn't believe him back then, but now? He stopped and looked out over the valley, where sunlight was spilling across the trees. Now, I think maybe he was right. We caught up with the others by the river, just as Emma was pulling her boots off to wade in. The water ran cold and clear over smooth stones, and soon everyone was splashing around, laughing like kids again. It was one of those moments that felt suspended in time. Nothing to do, nowhere to be, just the sound of water and friends and the wind in the branches. When we finally settled on the riverbank to eat lunch, Mason pulled the journal from his pack. "Thought I'd write something for today," he said, glancing at us, "if that's all right." We all nodded. He opened to the page beneath Emma's writing from the night before and began to jot down his thoughts in slow, careful strokes. When he finished, he read it aloud. Today, the fire still burns, just in different hearts. I used to come here to remember someone I lost. Now, I come to be with those I've found. No one said anything at first, but I felt that line settle into me like a stone dropped into clear water. Silent, deep, spreading ripples. Then Ryan grinned and said, "Well, that's going in the permanent record. You're officially the poet of the group." Mason laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that feels like sunlight after rain. He closed the book and tucked it carefully away. The rest of the day was slow. Left and sat shoulder to shoulder, watching sparks rise and fade into the dark. It felt like the trip was winding down, but none of us were quite ready to let it go. Emma was the first to speak. "It's funny," she said, stirring the coals with a stick. "We've been camping together for years, but this time, I don't know. It feels different." Ryan nodded. "Yeah, like something shifted. Like we stopped pretending this was just another weekend away." I looked around the circle, at Mason with the journal beside him, at Emma's lighter resting near her boots, at Ryan gazing up through the trees, and I realized they were right. The wilderness had a way of stripping everything unnecessary away. Out here, there were no titles, no masks, no walls, just people, weathered and real, sharing warmth and silence in the glow of a dying fire. Mason broke the quiet with a soft laugh. "My brother used to say the fire never ends. It just moves from the wood to the smoke, from the smoke to the stars. Maybe that's what this is." He glanced up at the sky. All of us, burning bright for a while, leaving a little light behind. No one answered right away, but every one of us felt it, the truth of it. The fire popped, and a single ember lifted, glowing red against the night, carried upward until it vanished. When we finally crawled into our tents, the forest felt alive in that sacred breathing way it gets just before sleep. I lay there, listening to the faint murmur of the river and the whisper of the wind moving through camp. And I thought about the circle we'd made. The one not just of stones and logs, but of hearts, stitched together by laughter, by loss, by truth. In the morning, when we broke camp for the last time, Mason tucked the journal into his pack and slipped Emma's lighter beside it. "For next year," he said simply. We left the site cleaner than we found it, our footprints fading fast in the soft earth. As we hiked out, I turned back once to see the faint wisp of smoke curling up into the brightening sky, a last trace of our fire. That's the thing about moments like that. They don't stay.